Welcome to Food Shrinks.
Hey, I'm Molly Carmel,
I'm Clarissa Kennedy.
And I'm Molly Painschab.
and we are your food shrinks. We're three eating disorder and addiction therapists and also best friends. And we walk the walk and talk the talk with you. Our podcast is here to share honesty, humor, and unfiltered conversations we have when no one is recording, except now we are. What do we have on the docket today?
Sure. So today we have two emails and we're going to do them at one time because these two listeners actually collaborated with kind of like the issue they'd like us to speak on. So the first listener says, my grandson's just 2 years old. He eats well. He's not a picky eater. My son and daughter-in-law are good, but not fanatical about eating clean foods. He has no desire to eat any cake or ice cream or sweets. They offer these things, but like he really doesn't eat them. But the other day he had a Ritz cracker and I swear I saw it hit the Bliss point when consumed and he quickly reached for another. My question is twofold. How much or how often is it okay to offer ultra processed foods? And how do I deal with the fear that he may have the same tendencies I have with the food and separate his feelings from mine and not make an issue of it? And so then the second person who they're collaborating wrote in and she said, when I visit my 8-year-old granddaughter, she has two brothers and she's the only girl. I notice she's gained some weight. Up to that point, she was, quote, normal. I didn't say anything to her mother, my daughter, about it. She subsequently came for a visit with the family. And at the time, her 11-year-old boy cousin told her she was getting chubby. This was done without malice on his part and without great reaction on hers. She did tell her mother, who asked her if she thought she was chubby, and she said, no, I noticed my granddaughter eating more snacks. Used to be her family had a meal, a small piece of candy as dessert, and then didn't eat again until next meal. My daughter does not really have food issues, despite living overweight with an overweight mother her whole life. She's always been thin. She's probably 20 pounds overweight, but she's not bothered by it. She doesn't complain about her weight or diet excessively, but she will be more observant of what she eats. I have an adopted grandson in another family, adopted at age 5, who lost both of his parents to drugs. He has an extreme sweet tooth. While he's not obese, he definitely has a bit of a pot belly. As someone who's used food my whole life to deal with my problems, lived in a large body that I hated, and am in recovery for 2 years now with good success, I would like to be able to tell my grandkids my story without condemning myself or traumatizing them, but giving them information ahead of time that I certainly did not have. How do I do this in a loving, caring, and yet effective manner? So kind of a very similar situation. But I want to know your thoughts.
Oh, I already saw Molly C shake her head. And so she definitely needs to start because I'm so curious. I already have some thoughts too.
Hmm. Say what you mean, but don't say it mean, Molly. Um, Gosh, it's such a complicated, what a tangled web we weave. And I think love is can be really, really challenging sometimes when you're,
Hmm.
struggling and don't want someone else to struggle, and so much can get confounded. I ran a big practice in New York City for lots and lots and lots of years, and so many parents wanted me to fix their kids. And I'd like to make it clear what I'm telling you, not heal. Wanted me to fix their kids, and probably did assessments on, I'd say, 200 kids, and I saw three. And I asked only two questions to parents. I said, what's your relation? I said, what's your relation? Is the kid concerned? And is the pediatrician concerned? Those that you couldn't get through the door unless you answered yes to both of those questions. The third question I would ask, what's your relationship like with food?
Hmm.
And so only three kids out of 200 got to be seen by me because they couldn't answer those three questions. And I feel like these emails don't answer those three questions. I understand what we're saying, but even if we take this out of food and we take this to substance, it's not like warning your children that you're an alcoholic really does much to making your kids not alcoholic. I've
Hmm.
just been sitting in AA so long, like hearing that's where my parents warned me, and here I am sitting in the seat. And so I think, it's it's so hard to set aside your perspective, and it's so hard to set aside that what sounds like a trauma response of fight and mother and manipulate and manage and all the stuff we talk about in the codependency programs, and that idea of just letting them, right, maybe abusive in some ways, but it actually, these particular emails sound like everybody needs to take their hands off the body and go keep the focus up. There are these 3 rules, okay, that I run all my codependency programs by. You want to hear them? They're so good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because it would solve every problem of all of these letters, and then I'll stop talking. Number 1, we keep the focus on ourselves. Number 2, we don't force solutions onto people. And number 3, which is a really, really hard one, which is like we can be content and even happy regardless of how somebody else is behaving.
Mm-hmm.
And if you run your life like that, you're like a perfect model for someone who's struggling. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. I cede my time to Dr. Kennedy.
No, it was so great. And I think what I immediately heard so much of in both those emails was thin, larger body, weight, like that is what was screaming from it. And research shows weight stigma, not actually weight itself, is often more harmful to children's self-esteem, eating patterns, and their health outcomes. So kids can feel when we are labeling them or shaming them, even subtly. They pick up on those nonverbal cues, and then they begin to mistrust body. They begin to sneak food. They begin to disconnect from hunger and fullness signals, and potentially have some of these disordered eating patterns. And, bliss point is a real thing, and early exposure can shape cue-based eating patterns, but it's not necessarily the food that we need to be examining. It's not the Ritz cracker or the ice cream float that's causing addiction. It's how is food used and how is it framed that shapes the patterns over time.
I can also tell you, I just want to say one more thing, because we do try to make this about us and not us as professionals. And I was someone who was at a nutritionist at the age of 7, had food hid from me since the age of 5, had to bring special food to sleep away. I mean, like you name the intervention, and it was given to me from an early age, even before we knew about ultra processed foods. And I ended up a 325-pound, food addicted, compulsive overeating, ate through bariatric surgery. Like, I'm not saying we're powerless in our parenting, right? By any means, but sometimes what we think is going to work isn't. And I just, yeah, I mean, and told I was, people like you, Molly, have to work twice as hard to be half as good. And like, I was
Mm-hmm.
always fat shamed. I was always told I was different. I mean, every single thing, the reason I get so heated by these letters is I was so affected by these letters, and my mother was like, minimal in being able to be concerned about me, So I can't imagine what it must feel like for a kid to have a worried parent about maybe something that's maybe the punishment doesn't fit the crime, I guess.
I think we have to be clear, though, it's not even actually the children's parents who are concerned here.
It's
These are
grandchildren's.
grandchildren,
Yes.
Grandparents,
that are concerned
We
about their
have that too.
grandchildren.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead,
I
Clarissa.
was just going to say, too, in my personal experience, I maybe had too much exposure where it was like the Kennedy snack cupboard. There wasn't really any guardrails. And that early reward, for anything that's, was it emotions? Was it whatever? It is how I became to cope most of the time. And so there might have been, I believe there probably would have been some beneficial loving limits around access. Because again, I have this, my prefrontal cortex is not developed yet. And so I can't always make decisions for myself. And I might have needed someone to kind of say, give me a little bit more support and saying like, we're going to eat a meal and then we can have like something after, check in, are you hungry, whatever, but not, not just free access all the time. So, but again, I can also relate to this email. I certainly have nieces, and I know one of my nieces is certainly has a propensity towards becoming a Clarissa is probably like the nicest
May
way.
she be so lucky.
She's
Yeah.
got a beautiful
Yes.
aunt to look up to. Are you
May
kidding me
she.
right now? Are you kidding
See,
me right
May,
now? If that is being weaponized, I'm
Yeah.
okay,
coming. I'm coming
okay,
to
but
Perry
I'm
Sound.
just saying, like, but maybe like the Clarissa now, but the Clarissa who struggled so much is like the earlier
Who
Clarissa
was
who,
still
like,
just as worthy of
yeah, she
love
was
and
beautiful, worthy of love, but
all the
she just,
things.
like, you
Wrong
know,
podcast to bring that up on, Clarissa.
yeah, I know, I know. I worry about her struggling, right? However, I also know if she's struggling, I am here. And
Yeah.
I love her all the way. They call me the sugar sheriff. I never ever comment on food. I never ever comment on body. And that is just not my lane and not something I'm going to do. I'm not a parent. So I'm really interested to hear from the parent on
Mm-mm.
our panel to weigh in on this. Oh, weigh in, wrong word, maybe.
Eh. And I think this is why I wanted to hear what you two had to say first, because my thought was nobody listening to this is going to like what I have to say, because unlike Molly C, I don't know how to say what I mean without being mean sometimes, because I think sometimes mean is the only way through to some brains. Again, like I was just sharing about, like sometimes I needed to be shocked too. And here's my take on it. What I loved about what you said, Molly, was the hands off the body. We're talking young children, and I don't care what age they are. These could be your grandchildren, and they could be 25 years old. We're still not going to be talking about their bodies. We need to keep our eyes on our own plate, on our own goals, on our own dreams and ambitions, whatever it might be, because you're right. Like they can't answer. I'm being summoned by my daughter's cat. Um, uh, they, the situation is these things are being offered to them, and then when they say yes and consume them, they're being shamed.
That's, yeah.
And that is so not okay. That is so not okay. You cannot offer these things and go, oh, this is going to be a fun little social experiment. How does this go? I'm going to wait and see. And whatever their reaction is going to determine if they get more or less. That is so not okay. These things are either offered across the board or they're not. Period. And like you said, Clarissa, we do know this exposure at young ages. It doesn't matter what the substance, behavior, experiences, whatever they might be, because our brains are growing, pruning. And their little brains do not have, you cannot offer a Ritz cracker to a toddler or even a 7-year-old and think that because their prefrontal cortex, the part of their brain that makes rational decisions, is not formed. That is not even fully formed till they're about 25. Right? And this is where I get really concerned about this fear that we're turning children into substance use disordered individuals. Okay? I get like, it kills me inside when we start diagnosing children with these disorders when they don't even have, like, they don't have the skills, the structure, the support, whatever, to navigate the world in the way that adults do, or hopefully do, right? And so, yeah, I think as a parent, it makes me want to show up for those children and say, you don't get to have access to them anymore if this is how it's going to go. But you have an opportunity right now to pivot and say, you know what? It's actually none of my business what they weigh. And if I'm in charge of their care, I can offer the foods that I'm going to offer because those are the foods that are in my house that I eat anyway. But if I'm not eating those things and I'm offering them to somebody else and I'm watching their reaction and then I'm going, that's exactly how I was. And so now now we're creating self-fulfilling prophecy. Again, this is just like when I grew up in the household where I was called a fat, lazy bitch my entire life and whatever else, right? Like pretty soon I started becoming those things, because if I'm going to be accused of those things, if those are the words that are going to be hurled at me, might as well fit the label, right? Like that's where my teenage brain went. I'm not saying everybody does that, but I think as a parent, I think about my 2 young daughters who are very similar in age to Clarissa's nieces. And I think about, Clarissa's experiences with anorexia and exercise bulimia and laxative abuse and just wanting to fit into a group where she could share clothes with her friends and all of those things. And I have to walk this fine line every day, because I have a daughter who, borders on being underweight. Right. And now she's starting new medication, which are stimulants, which are going to further decrease her appetite. And I'm like, I need you to eat 3 complete meals. But also, like, how do I push that need for a health reason? Also, her pediatrician is like, we have to stay on this, right? And not forcing her to like into the quote clean plate club, which causes a whole nother issue. Like, so I can so understand the care and concern that is probably behind these emails. I really believe that about these people.
Yep.
And to know that it's very easy to have that 100-foot view in the relationship and role that you have in these children's lives. And if you're really that concerned, let's check in with the parents and let them set the boundary.
Well,
I don't know.
one more thing, just a little shaman in me wants to bring up, but maybe also check in with yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
This is
coming up with you that you cannot love your grandchildren, and not saying you don't, but like, what is coming up from you that is for you, that is making the shadow inside of you is screaming that it is so concerning that they have a belly. The shadow inside of you, like, that's what I mean. Keep the focus on yourself. It's like,
right.
if
Taking care of
if
themselves.
you're
Like, how do
looking
they
at
take care?
if you're looking at your grandchild having 10 pounds overweight, in your opinion, and it is bringing up fear and all this, like, that's a beautiful opportunity for your own personal growth. And it heals the planet to not have that kind of fear and prejudice around a belly. That's it, really. It doesn't feel like it's a you problem, but it's a you problem that is solvable and healable. That's what I mean. Listen, when I weighed, my grandfather was so scared of my obesity that when I weighed 325 pounds, I saw him 3 times a year religiously. When I was 325 pounds, I didn't go to see him to protect him. Talk about all of the stuff we talk about in the show. It's like, just have been loved no matter what.
Yeah.
I wonder what my life would have looked like if I could just have been loved without deep concern in every pound I had. I think my life would have been very different. I don't regret the past, but I promise you that.
No,
Oh,
I agree.
we're already at takeaways.
Well, I also think like it is still important to leave these individuals with like ways they can take care of themselves when they notice this coming up. So,
Right.
noticing it, where do I feel this in my body? How can I be compassionate with myself that this is coming up and allow myself to get a little bit curious about where this is coming from? And it's all feelings are valid and your feelings are valid and they come from like a really tough lived experience. And that's where it's like figuring out what do you need in that moment to be okay. And because it's not anything that the children can do to take care of you. You have to take care of you. And so what does that look like? What do you need to take a break in that moment? Go get some air. Do you need some movement? Do you need to regulate? That's what's most important because it's often coming from that very sympathetic, dysregulated state where now I see maybe the children's weight or the children's food as a threat. And there's no threats happening right here in this moment. That's just the lens I'm seeing things through.
P, what's your takeaway?
That this is definitely something I'm gonna have to take a note on and talk about in therapy the next time I see my therapist because like the kind of like visceral reaction that I have to this kind of topic, and I imagine it's because of like I put myself in like the place of like the mother and having children and not ever having an adult to protect me, and so wanting to protect, like feeling like these children need to be protected. And I'm with you, Clarissa. I don't think that's the case at all. That's the story that is occurring within me because of my nervous system reaction to all of this, right? And that's one of the reasons why, one of these folks had like said, "Hey, I have this question for you." And I was like, "Oh, it sounds like maybe that's a good question for the podcast." So you get kind of like this, well-rounded response. It's not just my response, because I knew my response would be very biased in the direction of advocacy for the children. And so my big takeaway is just like, this is obviously something I'm still working on too, just in a different way, but similar, right? Two sides of the same coin. That I want to just protect, and protect doesn't always get these children, if they absolutely do need help, that doesn't get them help either. If I'm just like running in interference all the time, right?
Yeah.
So I've got to find my centered place with all of it. But how about you, Molly?
My takeaway is how absolutely complicated really, really, really loving somebody is.
Mhm. Yeah.
No matter how healed you are, it's like the shadows always come up, the fear always comes up, the mothering, manipulating, managing, making it happen of codependency just comes in and comes out sideways. And I just want to say to the two people who wrote those notes, like, there's something very powerful, because clearly there's something in you that knows this isn't okay because you asked us. And I really want to reward that and highlight that, because we're tough nuts today. And if the idea like, oh, maybe this isn't okay, maybe I should ask the food shrinks about this, is a really powerful thing. And those kids are really, really lucky that you have an open-minded attitude enough to ask us. And I want to say, what do they say? Sin, like, whatever. I've done it. I've screamed at kids. I've done the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm with you. And, it's a beautiful thing to be healing in a family system. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's our show.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody wants to hear more about this topic, you have
I'll
questions.
try to be nicer.
Well, I'm not, I don't need to be nice. I'm being kind though. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
you
being
are.
kind, right?
You're
Like this, I am being
beautiful.
kind and honest. So, if you do want to hear more about this, or if you have more questions, or if you have thoughts on this, please feel free to email us at asktheshrinks@foodshrinks.com.
And if you liked what we had to say, or maybe you just have a comment on this episode, leave us a comment, because we respond to every single comment we get. And if you found it supportive and, you really loved it, you can 5-star it and share it with friends, and maybe have more conversations like these. These are hard conversations, and maybe we sometimes need to have them with other moms or our grandparents as well, to like loop them in. So it's beautiful that they ask these questions, and we love that getting them from you. And we love having these more nuanced, challenging conversations. So we will see you next week.
Yay,
Bye.
bye. Thanks for listening to Food Shrinks. Quick reminder, this podcast isn't a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider for guidance suited to your needs. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to help us reach others on the recovery journey. Take care, and remember, freedom with food is possible. See you next time.